The Lord of Ishikawa, Daigo Keijimitsu, makes a deal with the 12 demons in order to save and rule his land, Ishikawa, which has been swept by repeated famines and epidemics. In return for this deal, the demons can take anything away from Daigo. Daigo's son was then born with no limbs, nose, eyes, ears, or skin. However, a shrine figure had sacrificed itself to make sure Daigo's son still lived even without the majority of its body parts. Daigo was delighted to see the state of his first son, for he surely knew that the 12 demons took his son in exchange for his request. Daigo's son was thrown away in the river because they believed that he would not last any longer and would die soon. Ishikawa is now on its way to prosperity because of Daigo's deal with the demons. Dororo is a homeless orphan who wants to be rich by selling quality goods to villagers. However, a group of thugs attacks her and takes her load of goods. She tried to fight with them, but it was no good since she was a lot smaller than these thugs. Luckily, a mysterious boy with a prosthetic face named Hyakkimaru comes up nearby when he senses a monster around. The monster ate the thugs and was about to attack Dororo when Hyakkimaru took off his prosthetic arms and revealed his blade arms. He killed the monster in an instant. Shortly, his prosthetic face fell on its own, revealing his skull and veins as a new skin grew back on his face. Dororo tries to befriend him even though he knows that Hyakkimaru can't see, speak, or hear her. Hyakkimaru can only sense the souls of everything around him, and he is letting Dororo stay beside him because he can see that Dororo's soul is pure. Dororo asked Hyakkimaru to come to a nearby village with her and slay a monster, for which there was a great sum of money as a reward. Hyakkimaru sensed that the monster was the head of the village named Lady Bandai and tried to attack her. However, the villagers protected Bandai and threw Hyakkimaru and Dororo into a room. In the room, they found a blind old priest who was thrown there for trying to attack Lady Bandai as well. The old priest explained to Dororo how he and Hyakkimaru each have their own vision, and they can only see the souls of everything around them. Dororo realized that Hyakkimaru tried to attack Lady Bandai because he sensed something dangerous in her. Sneaking out of the room, Hyakkimaru once again tried to fight Lady Bandai. Lady Bandai transformed into a monster, however. A villager who barged in let Bandai escape because they actually all knew her secret. Hyakkimaru chased down Lady Bandai and finally killed her. Upon killing a new monster, Hyakkimaru retrieved another part of his body, and this time it was his sense of pain. Jukai, a doctor who gives free prosthetics to both the living and those who died in the war, was the one who found Hyakkimaru on the river and gave him his missing body parts. Jukai once served Lord Shiba, who killed many people during the war, including the father of his apprentice, Kaname. Kaname left Jukai upon learning this fact. Jukai thought his life was once again over. However, he met Hyakkimaru floating on the river and raised him as his own since then. He gave Hyakkimaru a body and taught him how to kill and survive on his own. Not long after, Hyakkimaru leaves Jukai to wander off on his own. While wandering, Hyakkimaru and Dororo found a group of men killed in the forest. Shortly after, a man who was being controlled by a cursed sword tries to fight with Hyakkimaru. The man fell off the cliff and Dororo got her hands on the sword instead. Hyakkimaru tries to chase Dororo, who is now being controlled by a sword. He successfully gets Dororo's hands off the sword. However, the man who fell off the cliff earlier appears before them and reclaims the sword. He was eventually killed by Hyakkimaru, making him regain his ears along with his sense of hearing. Hyakkimaru, who is now shocked by all the sounds he is suddenly hearing, grew weaker and eventually felt sick. While resting, Hyakkimaru hears a gentle voice singing and somehow manages to calm him down. He followed the sound and stumbled upon a girl named Mayo. He faints in Mayo's arms as Dororo and the priest catch up with him. Hyakkimaru is now under Mayo's care. Mayo provides food and medicine for them. However, to be able to provide for them and for all the kids she adopted, Mayo works for both Sakai and Daigo's camps, which are currently at war. She does lewd business in both camps at night, and Dororo witnessed her getting molested by several men when he tried to follow her to work. The priest, who sometimes meets with Dororo and Hyakkimaru, wandered on his own to find a place for all of them to stay at once the war between the two camps starts. He finds a perfect vacant place away from the war. He senses that this place is vacant because a powerful ghoul is staying there. The priest relayed this news to Dororo and Hyakkimaru. Hyakkimaru immediately went to fight the ghoul, even though he's not fully healed yet. The priest assisted Hyakkimaru as he fought with the monster, but it still got his leg, making him scream at the top of his lungs. It turns out that, in exchange for his leg, inflicting this monster has made him retrieve his voice. Hyakkimaru is now a lot weaker with his sudden sense of hearing and pain, along with his leg being severed. In spite of that, Hyakkimaru becomes a lot calmer upon hearing Mayo's voice gently singing. Hyakkimaru now tries to sculpt his own prosthetic leg as he learned from Jukai. After successfully carving his leg out of wood, he went again for the monster who had bitten his leg. This time, he finally killed it and regained his right leg. On his way home with Hyakkimaru, Dororo noticed that the temple where they stayed with Mayo was burning. They quickly ran towards the temple and found the dead bodies of the kids along with Mio. Daigo's troops were sent over to Mayo's place after seeing her doing business in both camps, thinking she was a spy. Hyakkimaru sensed the bloodlust in the place. He succumbed to his anger, learning that Mayo was killed, and went for the troops' heads. Hyakkimaru tries to stop him, thinking he is becoming the demon the priest warned him Hyakkimaru might become. Hyakkimaru finally calmed down and left the temple with Dororo. As Dororo and Hyakkimaru wandered through the forest, they encountered a spider monster who seemed to be preying on its victim. The spider monster managed to escape from Hyakkimaru after being slashed by his blade. The spider monster, who has now transformed into a normal lady named Ohaji, met Yajiro, a villager. Yajiro gave her a place to rest and food to eat. Upon arriving in the village, Dororo and Hyakkimaru saw a banner saying that there's a monster kidnapping people in the village and whoever finds them gets a reward. Motivated to get the reward, Dororo urges Hyakkimaru to find and kill the spider monster. Yajiro, on the other hand, continues to take care of Ohaji. Ohaji was impressed by how Yajiro cares for all living things, human or not, and has grown to like him. Yajiro offers Ohaji to help her escape the village because nobody can get out of the village unless they are a traveler. Ohaji accepted his offer, and they proceeded to a secret passage known only to Yajiro. However, on their way to sneak out of the village, they met Dororo and Hyakkimaru. Yajiro confessed that he was actually the one who was the one behind the missing people, as he helped them escape the village where the workers were overworked by the Lord. The guards hurt him and started to attack him. Bahaji protected Yajiro from the guards and fled the scene. On the other hand, Hyakkimaru chases after them. The guards caught up to Ohaji and Yajiro and landed a blow on Yajiro. This angered Ohaji, so she wrapped all of the guards in his cobweb. Hyakkimaru enters the scene and fights with Ohaji. Ohaji decided to die beside the injured Yajiro. Another village is attacked by what they call Nokosaragumo. This is a forsaken cloud that makes it rain ash and eats people. Every time this cloud arrives, they offer a bride to stop it from killing. This time, the bride offered to be Saru's sister. Saru, together with Dororo and Hyakkimaru, tried to attack the cloud before it even took Saru's sister. However, the true body of the cloud appears before them as a huge centipede. Meanwhile, Hyakkimaru's senses are blocked and clouded by the centipede, making him unable to fight. The centipede went for Saru, but his sister sacrificed herself instead. Feeling motivated to take their revenge, Saru and Dororo devise their plan when the centipede appears again. Shortly after, the black cloud reappears again in the village and Dororo makes the first move. Dororo pretended to be a bride offering so the cloud would gather around her. After successfully luring the cloud, she made it chase her, just until he got close enough to Saru, who had an arrow with a fire and explosion. Saru successfully hits the centipede and sets it on fire. However, their final blow is to get it under the sun, because they think that the sunlight is its weakness. Not long after, the burning centipede started healing itself and the black cloud surrounded them again. Hyakkimaru arrives and tries to fight the centipede by shooting arrows at it and listening to where it hits. That way, even if he can't sight the centipede, he will be able to hear where the arrows are shooting. Hyakkimaru's plan was successful, but it did not last long until his senses were blocked again. Dororo figured out Hyakkimaru's method and tied herself on top of the centipede's head. Dororo told Hyakkimaru that he should follow her voice because she was atop the centipede. However, Dororo's head hits a rock and she loses consciousness. Hyakkimaru tries to call out for Dororo by shouting. He successfully wakes up Dororo, and their plan proceeds as Hyakkimaru finally kills the centipede. Killing this monster had earned him his nose. Dororo falls sick and faints behind Hyakkimaru. Hyakkimaru, carrying Dororo on his shoulders, tries to get some help from the wandering villagers. They stumble upon a nun who lends them a house to rest in while Dororo recuperates. Dororo remembered seeing a red spider lily on their way to the nun's place, and tried to remind herself why she didn't like them. Back when Dororo was still younger, his father, Hibukuro, was a leader of a brigand group who devoted themselves to raiding samurai forts and giving all their acquired fortunes to poor villages. Itachi, one of the brigand members, tried to persuade Hibukuro to join forces with the samurai, but Hibukuro loathed the samurai for what they had stolen from them during the war. Hibukuro's brigands are now preparing to attack Yanagimoto's samurai forces, whom they believe are exhausted from fighting Daigo's army. As they were about to charge, the Yanagimoto samurai knew of their position and fired arrows at them as if someone had already warned them that Hibukuro would be attacking. The arrows killed all of Hibukuro's members, leaving only him to survive. Itachi reveals himself as the one who betrayed the brigands and let the Yanagimoto samurai know of their plans because he joined forces with the samurai. Hibukuro, together with his wife Ojiya and his daughter, who was raised as a boy, Dororo, wanders off to find food and survive. Upon their way to find something to eat, they encountered a village being attacked by samurai forces. They tried to hide and leave quietly, but one of the samurai recognized Hibukuro's spear and attacked him. Now that Hibukuro is dead, Ojiya and Dororo are left alone to survive. Ojiya and Dororo starved for days and walked miles just to find food. They discovered that the samurai forces were giving food at the temple. They went there and lined up along with numerous other people who also desired to eat. The free food was about to run out. That's why Ojiya tried to squeeze in with the people to get to the front and make sure she got the food. However, Ojiya does not have a bowl to pour her food into. Out of desperation, she told the samurai to just pour the hot soup on her palms. With her burning palms, Ojiya made sure to make Dororo eat all the food on it. Dororo's mother passed away right after due to starvation. The demons in the Hall of Hell are slowly breaking one by one, and Daigo is now in search of his first son, whom he abandoned in the river years ago, for he is sure that Hyakkimaru is the one behind all this. Tahamaru, Daigo's second son, heard his father giving special orders to a man about the baby. With the help of Matsu and Hyogo, Tahamaru drugged the man into telling the truth about the baby. However, the man tried to cut his tongue in order to avoid talking. Tahamaru comes across a village that asks him for help regarding a monster from the seas near them that has been killing their people. In an attempt to kill the monster, Tahamaru, along with the villagers, went to see the monster using several boats. The monster appears before them, and Tahamaru successfully slices its arms. However, the monster sank into the current and attacked them from below the waves. Tahamaru could not do anything about it, so he let it escape for now. Tahamaru analyzed the bodies of water where the monster appears and devised a new plan. He made the villagers build a sluice that would connect the small lakes to the main lake and attach it to another sluice that would drain the water and move it to the small lake. Without the water, the monster can now be seen clearly. Tahamaru, along with Matsu and Hyogo, subdues the monster. However, the monster began throwing huge rocks at one of the sluices to break it and allow the water to enter again. The water once again filled up the dried lake and dragged the villagers. Hyogo drifted along the waves towards the monster, and when it was about to eat him, Hyakkimaru suddenly appeared and slashed the monster dead. Dororo and Hyakkimaru, who were on their way to Daigo's land after hearing it was a rich village, were gratified and rewarded by Tahamaru for helping them. While strolling through the village, they hear rumors about the curse of Bammen that makes rain unable to fall in Daigo's land as well as in neighboring villages. Daigo's Bammen was a fort that protected Daigo's land from the Asakura clan. It was the only wall that survived the war. It was the first time Daigo's army drove the Asakuras away. However, the Asakura clan has been getting stronger as they shoot Daigo's men onto the wall, trying to sully the goddess of mercy's blessings on Daigo's land. Ghouls have been gathering nightly, attracted to those corpses. Sukuroku, a kid from Daigo's land, warns Dororo and Hyakkimaru to never cross Bammen because the Asakura sentries guard behind the wall and shoot whoever crosses to Bammen. As night falls, the ghouls have gathered at Bammen. Hyakkimaru fights the Bammen monster and manages to hit it, but it just mutates into several copies of itself. While Hyakkimaru and Dororo are busy fighting with the monster, Sukuroku takes advantage of the distraction to pass the wall while Dororo follows in hot pursuit, but they are apprehended by Asakura sentries. The arrows of a squadron led by Keijimitsu Daigo himself eventually drive the demon away, and he then turns to face Hyakkimaru. As Hyakkimaru notices demonic red in Keijimitsu Daigo's soul, he does not recognize his father and is perplexed. Hyakkimaru is on the run when Keijimitsu commands his archers to fire at him. While Sukuroku and Dororo are being imprisoned in a prison in Asakura among other Daigo inmates, Dororo tries to escape. Tahamaru asks Nu Inokata, his mother, about the fate of his brother, but Keijimitsu appears and responds by explaining the deal he struck with the demons to preserve their territory. Nu Inokata and Tamaru sees Hyakkimaru, but Keijimitsu orders his execution. Keijimitsu asks Tahamaru if he would be prepared to give up the land to save his brother, which horrifies Tahamaru. In an effort to ignite a battle, the Asakura begin killing their captives at the Bammen, while the Daigo army advances, drawing the fox demon. Tahamaru, who has grudgingly accepted his father's decision and is accompanied by Lord Keijimitsu and his troops, confronts Hyakkimaru. Hyakkimaru fights with Tahamaru and damages his eye, then kills the demon, causing it to be pulled into the Bammen. Arriving and pleading for pardon for her involvement in Keijimitsu's deal, Nu Inokata kills herself with a knife, causing Bammen to be destroyed as a result of her sacrifice. When the village's survivors come, Sukuroku is reunited with his mother. While Dororo tries to persuade Hyakkimaru to go to an onsen, the latter continues his search for demons. Later, in the faceless Buddha statue known as Hakumen Fudo, Dororo meets a woman named Okaka, who resembles her mother. He introduces Hyakkimaru and Okaka, who tells the tale of the sculptor who began the Buddha statue's carving, but passed away before finishing its face. Okaka wraps up the tale of the demon that lived in the statue but yearned for a face. In order to bring human offerings so that it may take their faces, it revived the sculptor as Okaka, giving her the capacity to alter both her look and voice. Hyakkimaru wakes up as Okaka brings him to the waterfall and begins to engage Hakumen Fudo in combat. Okaka paralyzes Hyakkimaru using the demon's might, but Dororo begs her to spare him. As a result of Dororo's pleading, Okaka permits herself to be cut by Hakumen Fudo's sword, which allows Hyakkimaru to strike and smash the demon's statue while Okaka disintegrates. Later, while visiting an onsen, Hyakkimaru and Dororo meets with the old priest and some other kids who see a map that appears on Dororo's back. In a flashback, Dororo's father, Hibukuro, had drawn a portion of a map showing where he had buried his money on the back of his wife, Ojiya, and the remaining portion on Dororo's back so that the two of them might later retrieve it together. Before her mother passed away, Dororo memorized the map from her mother's back. The old priest and Hyakkimaru understand the map appear when Dororo's back warms up. Hyakkimaru keeps looking for demons despite Dororo being grabbed by a gigantic baby-like monster. The monster vanishes as they approach Sabaim, the land's lord, who is bringing a flower offering for the spirit that resides there as they arrive to a demolished temple. He extends an invitation to stay at his residence, claiming that the temple had housed a nunnery which exploited children before being struck by lightning and being destroyed, which killed everyone inside. The following evening, a caterpillar-like monster attacks the travelers, but after Hyakkimaru strikes it with his sword, Meimei Onba, a massive moth-like demon, appears and drags the creature off. The moth changes into a woman with white hair as it lands close to Sabaim. She informs Sabaim that the meal he gave her kids was too potent, and he calms her and swears to keep her and her kids safe. Dororo travels to Sabaim's rich village and discovers a warehouse for rice. The villagers push Dororo into the basement. Dororo is in danger from the caterpillar monsters who inhabit the basement when the baby monster comes back to save her. The monster erupts, unleashing the ghosts of the kids from the burned-down temple that Sabaim and the villagers fed to Meimei Onba. Outside the settlement, Sabaim tells Hyakkimaru how he accepted and married the Meimei Onba after accepting her as the village's protection against roving samurai and monsters. Hyakkimaru vigorously defends himself against the Meimei Onba moths as they attack him after emerging from their chrysalides. The final one, however, obliterates Hyakkimaru's prosthetic leg and later offers itself as a sacrifice to ignite the settlement. The people battle over the last of the food after Dororo burns down the storeroom, destroying the caterpillars and the village's rice supplies. The original Meimei Onba is tracked down and killed by Hyakkimaru, who also gives him back his spinal column. He and Dororo return through the burned-out village of Sabaim, where many residents, including Sabaim, are found dead. Hyakkimaru responds that his only interest is eliminating demons when Dororo questions whether they made the correct decision. Hyakkimaru and Dororo part ways, but Itachi and his men track down Dororo. Itachi demands to see Dororo's side of the map after taking the half from Ojiya's back. Despite Dororo's denials, Itachi and his men take her nonetheless, since they think she has learned the map by heart. They travel for days, using the portion of the map that Ojiya left behind and which Itachi found after discovering her corpse. They reach Cape Hakatsu, where the wealth is hidden, but they need a boat to get there. Unfortunately, there weren't any boats in the nearby village because they assume that it has been burnt by robbers. They ran into Shiranui, a young man with one arm who offered to transport them across. They board two boats propelled by Jiromaru and Saburomaru, the two enormous sharks. Midway through the journey, Shiranui confesses that after feeding the sharks his arm, they began to crave human flesh, so he killed the villagers to feed them. Itachi, who is discouraged, describes how his lord took advantage of him and his warriors. Dororo scolds them for quitting and then dives into the water to act as bait to entice Saburomaru. When she signals, they pull her up and stab the shark to death when it comes to the surface. They later canoe ashore at Cape Hakatsu. The bandits brutally beat Shiranui when he got ashore to investigate. While removing Dororo's garments in search of the map, Itachi discovers that she is a female and that the map is on her back thanks to the heat of the fire. Shiranui swears vengeance as they tie up Dororo and depart with a finished map. A ghoul attacks Jukai as he adds prosthetics to the dead on a battlefield, but Hyakkimaru shows up and kills it. Jukai is appalled as Hyakkimaru explains what his father did to him back in his cave. Jukai comes to the realization that while Hyakkimaru's body has become more human, his internal humanity has decreased. Once Hyakkimaru succeeds against the demons, he would have to confront his family, thus Jukai is reluctant to heal Hyakkimaru's leg out of concern that it will result in further fighting. Suddenly, a landslide closes the cave's entrance. Remembering Dororo, Hyakkimaru reveals he is not alone as he makes his way out the cave. As they emerge from the cave, they discover that the nearby demon tree named Ayakashigi is generating additional ghouls in its fruit. They are all slain by Hyakkimaru until he finally cuts out the tree's heart and kills it. Nuvi no Kata recovers from her suicide attempt at the Daigo compound, but Tahomaru leaves without paying her any attention in order to kill a rumored ghoul. He locates a rat-like ghoul and attacks it with his helpers. Tahomaru then sets the structure on fire, swearing to use his sword to protect Daigo territory, killing the ghoul and any offspring that were still alive inside. Keijimitsu sends Tamaru and a small army to murder Hyakkimaru when they return. Shiranui summons Jiromaru to eat Saburomaru's body and transform into a demon with the ability to traverse land. It attacks Dororo, but Hyakkimaru defends her and slays the monster. Hyakkimaru regains use of his left leg. The two of Itachi's men that rush into the cave after he discovers are killed by explosives that have been booby-trapped. In pursuit of Hyakkimaru, Tahomaru issues the directive to kill everyone. The wounded Itachi grabs Dororo and runs away from more arrows while Hyakkimaru is attacked by Tahomaru, Mutsu, and Hyogo. In an effort to murder everyone, Shiranui detonates the booby-trap bombs from above and explodes them, killing himself and triggering a landslide. They decide to retreat, believing Hyakkimaru is dead, after many of Tahomaru's men are killed and Hyogo is seriously injured. In the meantime, Itachi, who is fatally injured, and Dororo stumble upon the wealth after falling into a cave made by the explosion. Shortly, Itachi passes away. Dororo chooses to keep the treasure a secret until she determines what to do with it. Dororo and Hyakkimaru decides to set off on a journey to find a swordsmith named Mutrosna to repair the swords in Hyakkimaru's prosthetic. The villagers inform Hyakkimaru and Dororo that Munetsuna's swords are subpar and that his daughter Okawa is ugly. Despite the horrifying Hayadoko masks that cover their entire home, they discover that neither is true. A spell is performed on Hyakkimaru by an Amano Jaku when Munetsuna brings the swords to a temple to be cleaned. As a result of the spell, he starts saying and acting in ways that are not what he intended, abandoning his quest and deciding to wed Okawa. Dororo intended to discard Hyakkimaru's swords because she felt rejected, but instead she ran into Munetsuna in the foundry and told him how she felt. The following morning, Dororo discovers that everyone in the village, including herself, has been speaking the exact opposite of what they mean, and that Munetsuna's masks have somehow made it possible to speak the truth. Amano-Jaku's spell leads Hyakkimaru to attack Dororo when she enters the temple wearing a mask, but Munetsuna, who is also wearing a mask, defeats the Amano-Jaku. When Okawa understands that the Hayadoko masks have been keeping them safe, Munetsuna sets the statue upright and reseals the Amano-Jaku. Okawa and Hyakkimaru break their engagement and Hyakkimaru's swords have been repaired. Tahomaru and his companions notice disaster befalling Daigo's villages. They presume that the demons are angry Hyakkimaru isn't dead. After the Goddess of Mercy statue was destroyed, Daigo realized that his agreement with the demons had been cancelled and that the days of wealth were over. Hyakkimaru and Dororo run upon Saburoda, a local demon hunter whose mother was devoured by a demon. They wait till a massive gnu appears. When Hyakkimaru tries to combat it, Saburoda intercepts him and now enjoys watching the monster eat horrified onlookers. Hyakkimaru and Dororo are fighting when they slide down a rocky hillside and Dororo's arm becomes stuck. Despite severing his left prosthetic limb, Hyakkimaru is unable to free her as the level of the underground water rises. Though his sword is damaged, the old priest suddenly makes an appearance and releases Dororo. Hyakkimaru fights and seriously wounds the gnu, still determined to reclaim his body. Saburoda is consumed by the gnu out of desperation, becoming a part of it. Finally, Hyakkimaru kills it, but no body parts are given to him even after he chops the gnu into bits, much to Dororo's horror. The old priest observes dejectedly as the cruelty causes Hyakkimaru's aura to turn red. In his unwavering pursuit of his body parts, Hyakkimaru enters Daigo's territory. A villager recognizes them and alerts Daigo. In the meantime, the situation in the Daigo's land gets worse. Poor villages are burned and their residents are massacred. Men of military age are drafted to fight the menacing Asakura clan. To stop Hyakkimaru himself, Tahomaru resolves to travel with Mutsu and Hyogo. Along the way, Mutsu and Hyogo recall being taken prisoner after witnessing the murder of their parents, only to be set free by Lord Daigo to be raised along with Tahomaru. They come across Hyakkimaru and Dororo and tries to fight them. Dororo watches in horror at Hyakkimaru's brutality as he amputates Mutsu's right arm, Hyogo's left arm, and Tahomaru's right eye. Suddenly, Daigo's warriors who have been ordered to guard their prince step in. Midoro, a horse, is sent by the leader bearing explosives, killing the horse and blowing Hyakkimaru down the ravine. Tahomaru is subdued by an arrow when he refuses to go, and the villagers arrest Dororo. Later, Midoro is possessed by a spirit which turned him into a flaming horse. While Keijimitsu gets ready to repel an anticipated onslaught by the Asakura clan, who intend to fight at Banman, Tahomaru's troop returns home with Dororo. Because of his fury over Dororo's kidnapping, Hyakkimaru attracts the demon horse to him. In the meantime, New and Okada releases Dororo in appreciation for keeping Hyakkimaru company and departs with him. When their boat sinks in the swift water, Daigo refugees, including the old priest, come to their aid. To assist in treating the wounded and ill, New and Okada resolves to stay. Tahomaru and Hyogo follow Matsu as she escapes the compound while suffering from a severe illness. While looking for Dororo, Hyakkimaru has allied with the demonic horse Midoro and is slashing a bloody path through Daigo's warriors. As the 12th and last demon approaches the demon temple, Matsu stumbles over and offers herself as protection for the region and its residents. Her offer is turned down when Tahomaru and Hyogo arrive. However, when Tahomaru, Matsu, and Hyogo eventually catch up with Hyakkimaru, the demon has cured their wounds. Matsu and Hyogo each carry one of Hyakkimaru's true arms, and Tahomaru possesses his 2 eyes. The bordering Daigo people prepare for the coming war while Midoro's foe flees. In an effort to retrieve his eyes and arms, Hyakkimaru fights Tahomaru, Matsu, and Hyogo. Midoro attacks Matsu and Hyogo, but she is wounded when her foe arrives, which causes her to become distracted. Midoro crushes Matsu and takes off Hyogo's skull in a fit of wrath, but the demon is in possession of their bodies and uses their limbs to gravely injure Midoro. Hyakkimaru's arms reappear after they die, and he uses his bare hands to seize the 2 sword blades that were in his prosthetic to continue fighting Tahomaru. When he notices Nunakata and Dororo approaching, Hyakkimaru is overwhelmed with emotion and flees, with Tahomaru following. The villagers, old priests, Nunakata, and Dororo discuss the worth of one life versus the demands of many, and come to the conclusion that only what they have acquired themselves can last. Daigo commands his army to advance at the border in an effort to overthrow the Asakura and give his actions some sort of justification. Hyakkimaru and Tahomaru continue fighting as they arrive at the Daigo fortress. They knock over a candle holder during the scuffle, which ignites the castle. Tahomaru and Hyakkimaru, who each believe the burning Daigo castle to be their hereditary kingdom, continue their furious conflict there. Nui no Kata enters the castle through a secret tunnel and meets with Jukai. Tahomaru is finally defeated by Hyakkimaru, but he spares his life. The demon possessing Hyakkimaru's eyes tries to possess Tahomaru, but Hyakkimaru succeeds in removing them, causing him to gain his eyes. Jukai presents him with a newly carved Goddess of Mercy statue after Hyakkimaru defeats the demon and makes himself whole for the first time. As the castle burns, Hyakkimaru and Dororo are reunited. As Tahomaru passes away in her arms along with the castle crumbling, Nu Inokata tends to his son. Daigo leads his army against the Asakura while suffering heavy casualties when the final demon statue falls in the Hall of Hell. Later, as Hyakkimaru discovers his father injured but defiant in the Hall of Hell, Daigo realizes Hyakkimaru would have been able to preserve his land if he hadn't made the deal with the demons. Hyakkimaru leaves without murdering his father and leaves the statue of the Goddess of Mercy behind. Dororo is left behind when Hyakkimaru leaves alone, but he knows they will reunite in the future. In the closing scene, which takes place a few years later, a young woman named Dororo hurries to welcome Hyakkimaru, who beams as he turns to look at her.